I'll give you the answer. Just listen. Fiat currency was when we stopped having money be backed by gold. Remember? So all money, in order for a country to give money to its citizens, to have money to put in the economy, it needed to have an equivalent and equal amount in gold or silver. At one point, countries stopped having gold or silver as a way to back up the money. So now our money has value because we say that it has value. Before, its value was in gold or silver. If you had $1, you would get, if you wanted, the equivalent amount in gold. And countries stopped doing that because it was too hard to keep that amount of gold in a state treasury while still having a good economy. We could not keep that amount of gold in the treasury. So we stopped having money that was backed by gold. And now it's not backed by anything. We just say that money exists and it has value because we say it has value. Is that clear? Oh, so good to hear. I look forward to all of you getting this right on your quizzes. What did the Peace of Westphalia do? Establish peaceful means the right to rule. If I have sovereignty, it means that I have the right to rule something. So this talks about borders. When in the past, armies would invade and attack regularly in order to get more territory or attack another army. They would have these attacks happening on land that was not theirs. Wars were happening for a very long time, and people were getting tired of all of these wars happening on a regular basis. And so when one of the wars ended, remember that picture where there was that one guy that had a beautiful red cape? That was a conference, a meeting that happened at Westphalia, where people agreed to create borders where if I was a leader of a territory, that you could not come into my territory and do whatever you wanted. You had to respect my sovereignty. You had to respect my borders. The Peace of Westphalia created the modern day country, where every country has their own government, has their own rules, and other countries cannot come in and do whatever the heck they want. So the Peace of Westphalia created modern day countries, where countries now could live peacefully with each other, rather than coming in and doing whatever they wanted when they were not supposed to. Now, if you still don't quite understand, again, let me know. I can always bring more examples. But this is an important concept to understand, because we are now heading into, we're going to be actually today talking about a time before countries existed, before we had borders to really say, this is my territory and that's your government, this is my government. We'll be talking about empires today. So it's important to understand that before countries, we had empires that would grow and acquire new territories by fighting wars. Last question. What is an ideology? Well, religion is a kind of ideology. Religion is a type of ideology. But what is an ideology? What? What's an ideology? Oh, ideas and beliefs, thank you. So, ideas and beliefs. So, an ideology is a way of being and thinking about the world. It's the glasses that you put on, I really can't see any of you, it's the glasses that you put on that help you understand the world better. If you see the world through a conservative ideology, a traditional ideology, then you will think about everything through that perspective, that we should honor our family, that we should respect rituals, that we should work really hard. If you have a different ideology, where maybe you are more liberal, maybe you then have glasses when you put them on, you want equality for everyone. You want for people to have what they need in order to live good lives. You want fairness and justice in the world. So these are different ways of thinking, different sets of beliefs and ideas that shape the way you see the world. And religion is one way of seeing the world that has an impact on how we relate, how we talk to, and build relationships with one another. Woo. So, let's talk today about development of civilization. So when we first of all, I'm going to use this timeline before the next few lectures, or during the next 2 or 3 lectures, in order to help keep you aware of where we are in time. It can be really challenging, it can be really difficult to keep aware of exactly where we are in the world, because we're talking about things that are happening 10,000 BCE, or things that happened maybe 1,000 CE. So I've divided the world, or our classes, into 6 different subject categories by the time period and year. So we're going to be talking about the way that people transformed their environment and developed new technology to be able to build civilizations, build empires. Okay? of Africa. So the first humans lived and walked through the continent of Africa 6 million years ago BCE. That's a very long time. Because look at where we are in North America and the Caribbean. The Caribbean is where my parents are from. There's the island, Haiti, that I mentioned the first day of class. So, 4,000 BCE, we have from 6 million years ago, the first humans walking through Africa. And it wasn't until 4,000 BCE that we had people coming into North and South America. So that's a long, long, long time. And as people started walking, that's when they started to build new relationships with each other and grow. The first kinds of societies that were created were hunter-gatherer societies. Hunter-gatherer is made up of the two words, right? Hunter, to hunt for food, hunt for animals. And gather, to gather fruits and vegetables for you to eat. Which one do you think uses more effort and energy? Hunting or gathering? Hunting. Hunting, huh? No. Because think about it. If you're hunting, you're basically going to be like this the whole time. And then you start to hunt. But you might have to wait for hours before you finally see an animal to kill. Gathering takes more effort and energy because you're spending all day picking food, preparing the vegetables, preparing the fruit to eat. And you have to do it a lot because that's where most of the food you're going to eat comes from. Meat is hard to get. You might spend days before you're able to kill a deer or kill an animal for food. You might never see one, and then you come home with no meat. But you can always find fruits and vegetables because fruits and vegetables don't run away from you. You can pick them. So this kind of lifestyle was challenging and hard. So both men and women had to do the work in order to feed themselves. These societies were actually pretty small because you don't want to have to feed too many people when it's already so hard to find food in the first place. So you might have a society with 20 or 30 people because it's just easier. So when I wrote over here that hunter-gatherer societies are egalitarian, it means that people had an equal amount of effort to spend on food gathering and caring for the tribe. It wasn't men go hunting and women go gathering. No. The other word is nomadic, which means that hunter-gatherers were always moving. They had to maybe stay in one place just because they were hoping to find, they had heard that this was a good place to go hunting, so maybe they might stay for 2 weeks, a couple of months. They found a really great bush full of berries So they decided to stay for a little bit. But once they wanted to leave, they would go. They would just simply pack up and move to a new location. And that's how you had people walking through Africa, walking through the Middle East, and then going to Asia or Europe, because they were nomadic. They were constantly moving. Eventually, though, people thought to themselves, why do we always have to move and hunt? Wouldn't it be easier if we were to raise the animals we want to eat? Rather than spending time hunting, let's just grow the animals and raise the animals ourselves. Rather than spending days looking for fruits and vegetables, let's grow them ourselves. So then you had a shift to pastoralism. Pastoralism is all about domestication, that word right there, domestication, which means to make something useful to humans. When you have a cat, for example, if the cat comes to you and rubs on you and asks you for food, that cat is domesticated. If you try to do the same thing with a tiger, the tiger will eat you. It is not domesticated, right? So that's the difference. It's easy to talk about with animals, but something really interesting when it comes to plants is the way that we domesticated plants. Now, in the wild, if you are big, it's going to be very difficult for you to run, to hunt, to gather, because you are going to be going. You're not going to be very efficient. So if you are skinny and small, you will be better in the wild. The same logic goes for fruits and vegetables. In the wild, some fruits and vegetables are disgusting because they're all shrivelly and small and bitter. They don't taste good because they're not meant for us to eat. They want to survive. So they make themselves small and they don't make themselves very tasty. But we're humans and we're smart. So we started to look for the fruits that were bigger. We started to care for and collect the seeds from the fruits and vegetables that tasted better. And over time, we then made bigger fruits and bigger vegetables work for us. In the wild, corn, for example, doesn't look at all like corn if you were to leave it alone. Old corn was very small, the kernels were inedible. But you all know what corn looks like. It's big and juicy. If you boil it, it's us who made it that way, who selected the corn that would give us the most amount of food. So that's how we domesticated plants. We made them better for us to eat. So pastoralism then requires, as you are growing and caring for cows or caring for plants, it requires that you stay in one place for at least the harvest. So people started to stay in one place for maybe a season, 6 months, a year. And we could now feed more people. Hunter-gatherer societies, 20 people maximum. Pastoral societies, now we can feed about 50 to 60 people. so our communities became bigger. And then eventually, we thought to ourselves, why move at all? Why don't we make the nature work for us? Why don't we just stay in one place, build homes, build a nice place for our animals to eat, and then just stay and live happily? And so then you started having the first agricultural societies. You also had a change in farming techniques, because before, with pastoralism, farming was just about feeding yourself and your family. Every household had a little farm, a little tiny plot of land that would feed them for what they needed. Under agricultural society, what it means to be agricultural is to now dedicate to grow one crop in a larger and larger amount of land. So now you have an entire field, an entire piece of land where you just grow wheat. You have an entire piece of land where you just grow corn. You have an entire piece of land where you might feed your animals. And that was the beginning of an agricultural society. When you grow more food, you then end up with extra. So then people are able to become clever with what they do with the extra things that they grow. So they create surplus. I'll talk about that in just a second. So the first agricultural societies were in the Middle East, in a place that we call Mesopotamia, or we also call it the Fertile Crescent. Crescent is the same word as croissant, that delicious French pastry we all come to know. And so it's because it's like a little arc, crescent. And what made this piece of land in the Middle East so rich and powerful was because you had two rivers that went through the Fertile Crescent to help people grow their fruits and vegetables. So the Fertile Crescent was the first place where we now had modern civilization. Civilizations are more advanced societies. So we went from hunter-gatherers, small communities of 20 so people, to now being able to have a civilization that might have hundreds of people, thousands of people living in one place. Now civilization, the first civilization, started, like I said, in Mesopotamia, the Middle East. They also ended up spreading to India. That's where you see the Indus Valley. Egypt, ancient Egypt, was a major civilization. And then northern China was also part of the earliest civilization. What makes a civilization? There are a few characteristics that we can say make a civilization. One, the fact that they are urban settlements. What I mean by urban is when you have a large number of people living together using modern technology to help them live high-quality lives. Urban is about the number of people living in an area. So the main characteristics of civilization are the fact that you have a high number of people living in one place. And as a result, you need to have a high amount of infrastructure or systems to be able to support that life. What do I mean? If you live in a very small village and there's one well, it's pretty simple for you to go every day to the well, pump your water or pull your water up, and then go back home. There's no problem. It's just you and maybe 20 other families, not a big deal. If we were to have the same system in Phnom Penh, it wouldn't work. Can you imagine people going to the Mekong every single morning to get water? That's not possible. So what do? What did we create? We created a system of pipes to be able to deliver water to multiple people, to a group of people. Phnom Penh is modern because it has very fancy roads, and it has hospitals and schools, multiple hospitals, multiple schools. These are all part of what we call infrastructure. So a modern civilization is an urban settlement that has modern infrastructure. We then end up having full-time specialists outside of being a farmer. Before, everyone was able to do everything necessary in order to have a society be functional. So, everyone in this classroom, if we were part of a pastoral society, would know how to milk a cow. Everyone would know how to farm. Everyone would know how to hunt. Everyone would know how to build a house. Everyone would have to do everything because, well, why should you be special and only do one thing when we are such a small community? As you get bigger, though, it becomes less important for you to do everything. It actually makes more economic sense for maybe the 2 of you to make clothes. Maybe the 4 of you will focus only on growing corn. Back in the row, all of you will grow the sheep and care for the sheep. Maybe all of you over here will learn how to care for the fruit trees. You start to become specialists so that only a few people will do the work that will benefit everybody. It's how our society is now. Not everyone is a business person. Not everyone is a teacher. We all have our special skills. And we needed to do that, by creating special skills, we then had people who could get really creative in those skills. So maybe the 2 of you both make beautiful clothes, but one of you specializes in working with silk. And now you make beautiful clothes out of silk, and that's your talent. That was only possible when you have societies that are big enough to have specialties. Is that clear? Yeah? Okay. A few of you are covering your faces, so I'm just trying to figure out. I mentioned earlier the word surplus. When you have extra, that's a surplus. So let's just say that I grow enough corn for the whole class. Everybody has enough corn to eat. But I still have 10 kilos left of corn. Well, what am I going to do with all of that corn? I could sell it, you're right. I could sell it for extra, but everyone already has enough corn. So maybe what I might do is turn the corn into flour and then make maybe a delicious little cake out of corn flour. Now you guys have corn. You're going to be happy to eat the corn, but now I'm selling cake. Ooh, something new that I can offer you. When you have excess, it's important to understand how to turn that excess into new items, new products. That's innovation. So having extra made people more creative because you don't want for the food to go to waste, so you create something new out of it. As people started to make more money, some people made a lot more money, some people made less money, and so you started to have the creation of classes, where you had people who were upper class, high class, who had more money, where you had people who were in the middle class, who had enough for what they needed. You had people who were in the working class, who could always use a little more. So when you start to create classes, division, economic division, you then create a need for structure and better organization. That's where you have the last, which is state-level organization, which means you create a government, or at least you create a system of leadership. So that way, somebody in a huge group, if somebody were to become a leader, that means that if you guys needed a decision to be made, you would talk amongst yourselves, talk with the leader, and then the leader would say, okay, I think the best solution would be to do A. All right, great. So then you start to create an organization to help a large group of people make decisions and accomplish things. So these are the main characteristics of society. Here are secondary characteristics, which means characteristics that not every single early society had, but sometimes they did. So when it's main, that means all societies, all civilizations had these characteristics, and some had also these characteristics, which included the building of beautiful monuments and buildings. Now look at something like Angkor Wat, right? Somebody took the time to carve every single face, every single leaf on those buildings. It doesn't serve any purpose. It's not necessary for the structure of the building to have a face looking at you, but it is beautiful and it's meaningful, and the ability to create beautiful things just because they're beautiful is a mark or an evidence of an advanced society. Not everything has to be practical. Now you can make things because they make you happy. So you make art. They also have a system of writing. Now the early societies that I mentioned, Mesopotamia, Indus, northern China, at that time, as far back as 2300 BCE, we didn't have writing just yet. So the ability to write is something that came a little later. And you have, when people started writing, the first things that they would write were actually just to keep track of things. So we're talking about how many people live in this household, how many words when they started developing writing. Lastly, the development of exact sciences. As people became more creative, then we started looking for new ways to do things. So maybe it doesn't make sense to keep doing, to have water flow using gravity. Then you have somebody who creates a pump, and that makes it easier. So you start to create scientific advancements to make people's lives easier. Any questions so far on anything I've talked about now? Clarifications or words that you didn't understand on the screen? Okay. So as you start to have a civilization growing and getting bigger, you start to have leaders who are starting to grow bigger and want more. So then you start to actually see the rise of empires, where you have different nations, different groups of people who start to fall under one large organization. So one person will just say, all right, you know what? I think you guys have what I need in order to be rich, so you all now will work for me and pay taxes to me. Sometimes empires didn't have everyone speaking the same language. Empires were not countries. Empires were pieces of different civilizations that were put together by one leader. They didn't always share religion. They didn't always share languages. They didn't always share the same ethnic background. But now, they were under an emperor. And they had to either pay taxes or work for the emperor as they needed. Empires were a form of imperialism. We're going to be talking about imperialism in this class a lot, because imperialism is about one major power controlling another nation or land with the intent to use its people and resources in any way possible. So when you are building an empire, you are hoping to conquer other people for your benefit. So with empires, you're usually hoping that the people you conquer are going to work for you, make you money, and make you more powerful. So an example of imperialists are also Europeans. Europeans, in colonizing a place like Indochina, they were being imperialists. They wanted to use this region as a way to make themselves more powerful. So we will be using the term imperialism in class, and I will come back to it so that you understand the importance of this term. But just understand that imperialism is about power. Imperialism is about power. Imperialism is power. Let's say, imperialism is power. 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 Imperialism is power. Power. Alright. I mean, I can't make a choir out of you, but I know that you guys will get this. You can either, in an imperialist system, you might be able to acquire power by force. So you come in and you say you have your store and you're like, you are mine, you need to get over here, and you can acquire power by force. Or you can acquire power by negotiation. So you say, hey, you have something that I need. What do you say that I give you 20% of whatever I make, and you give me access to your land? And you might say, 40%, and then we have a negotiation. Or maybe you and I can get married, so that way your tribe and my empire become one. So that's another way that you might be able to gain power as an imperialist. Okay? There's also an entire game called Age of Empires, that if you ever want to conquer your own empire using a computer game, it's an actual game, and this is an image from it, so you can actually become an emperor of the world if you so chose. So, this is a video that I want to show about how empires grew. When watching this, so the first, you're going to see a few, let me just go through. So here, sorry, let me just get my mouse over there. Cool. So this video is a long video, but I'm not going to show you the whole thing. But it starts from 3000 BCE, where you have the Egyptian Empire, and then you have the growth of empires in the Middle East. And as you can see, empires grow, and then disappear, and then grow some more, maybe get acquired by another empire before disappearing. So this will show, we're going to be actually talking about Babylon over here. We'll be talking about Babylon, which became a really important empire, but then disappeared. We're also going to be talking about the Hittites today, which is over here. Let's skip ahead a little bit. So here you can see now there's an increase in the number of civilizations and empires. Just watch at how quickly things can change year after year, because people don't stop fighting wars in order to acquire more power. So you see the neo a dynasty that is also growing. And then let's not forget that India also has its own empire that is growing. We mentioned last week Lydia, because Lydia is where we have the world's oldest coin. It's from Lydia, which then became acquired by the Achaemenid Empire, which became really big. We'll come back to this video later. Next class, we'll be watching that video again as we keep talking about empires in our class. So today, we'll be talking about the Akkadian, Babylonian, Shang, and Mora Empire. Okay? The Akkadian Empire was the first empire of Mesopotamia. And one of the crazier things is that scientists, hi guys, right here, that scientists researchers who were looking in the dirt to understand our past cannot find the capital of Akkadian Empire, Akkad, because it was kept secret. And so we don't even know where the empire was in the Middle East. But it was one of the earliest empires, and I will talk a little bit more about Acadia, the Akkadian Empire, because it had an amazing leader. The Babylonian Empire used to be part of Akkadian Empire and then became its own thing. And the reason why the Babylonian Empire was well known is actually because of this black object called the Code of Hammurabi. Hammurabi was the emperor, the king of Babylonia. People referred to him as a god because he was considered to be so wise, so smart, and so full of wisdom. What he did was create not the first set of laws. People had already created laws before this, but he created a system of laws that were based on fair punishment. Because back then, if you stole something from someone, if I stole her laptop, she could do whatever she wanted to me. She could either curse me out, "Your mother," or she could kill me because it was a very expensive laptop, right? Nobody had a set system for how to punish somebody when someone did something wrong. So Hammurabi created the first set of laws where if you did something, well, here was your punishment. And he divided these punishments based on whether you were a slave, whether you were a merchant or a middle-class person, or whether you were a noble person, an important person, or a priest. Let's say you stole something. The Code of Hammurabi would say, if you stole something and you were a slave, you would have your right hand cut off. It's actually on there. If you were a middle-class person, you would have to pay 20 silver francs. That's 20 silver pieces. And if you were a noble person or a priest, you might have to pay 1 gold piece. So, it wasn't exactly fair for the slaves because they always got the worst punishment. Always. But it was the beginning of trying to make a system of punishment fair, so that people just didn't do whatever they wanted and punish people however they wanted. Under Hammurabi, we also had the growth of cities. Now, I asked the other class, how big is Phnom Penh? How big is Phnom Penh? Do you know what's the population of Phnom Penh? Wait, 60? That's Cambodia. You're giving me the population of Cambodia is 16. I think so. The last class told me 2 million. Okay, of Phnom Penh, 1.5 million? 4 million. Okay, you guys need to know your Phnom Penh. Somebody look it up. Actually, while I'm talking, can someone just look up what's the population of Phnom Penh? And then you can give me the answer. It might seem like it's a lot. was impressive. And so Babylonian Empire had created a good enough infrastructure, good enough system to be able to support the largest amount of people at that time. 200,000 was an insane, a crazy high number. All right, so for the people that I told to look up the population, does anybody have an answer? 1.5 million? Is that what you saw on the internet? Oh, 275. Oh, 12. Okay, that's not bad. Okay, so 1.5 million in Phnom Penh, and Phnom Penh is actually not that big. Like if you think about it, it's a pretty small in size, but yet so many people live here. The Babylonian Empire fell apart for a couple of different reasons. And then a new version of the Babylonian Empire, Neo-Babylonian Empire, appeared. This state became the most powerful state during its time. And it really had a huge focus on art and architecture. Hello? So if I hear a lot of talking, does that mean that you guys have questions, or maybe you're talking for clarification? Because if that's the case, let me know. Are you okay? Okay. So with Neo-Babylonian Empire, one of their most amazing creations was the Ishtar Gate. This gate is actually in Berlin. They found the gate, took every single brick from Babylonian Empire, where it used to be, in the Middle East, and then rebuilt the gate inside a museum. It's amazing. And the Neo-Babylonian Empire, we're going to come back to it for why it was important. The Shang Dynasty, also known as, when you see AKA, it means also known as, also referred to as the Yin Dynasty, and was known for its bronze. Metal was a massively important thing to create. So when the Yin Dynasty was able to master the art of using bronze, everybody in the Eurasian continent wanted to buy from the Yin Dynasty their beautiful bronze pieces, whether it was bronze tools or bronze art decorations or bronze weapons. Lastly, the Maurya Empire, which was an empire in India. And they built a road because they were in the middle of China and Europe, in the Middle East. They had already started building a road called the Grand Trunk Road before the Silk Road. So they actually contributed to bigger trade networks on the continent. And down here are two examples of their coins that they used during trade. So there are several reasons why an empire might get big. And out of these reasons, usually it's more than one or two. But I'm going to talk about each one and offer an example for why an empire might get big or small. And I'm explaining this now because next class we'll be talking specifically about the Roman Empire and the Han Dynasty. So by understanding why certain empires are affected, you can then understand the reasons why the Roman Empire and the Han Dynasty, one of the longest empires to exist in our history, also became the ones that were destroyed. So first, let's talk about why empires get big. So remember the Akkadian Empire, the oldest empire, where we can't even find its capital. What made the Akkadian Empire so important was its leader. What makes a good leader? What do you think makes a good leader? Integrity. When you have good integrity. Sargon the Great was one of the best-known leaders because of all of the qualities that you just shared. One of his many things that he did, he was very fair to his subjects, the people that he ruled over. People knew him as somebody who would make sure that even if you did not have a lot of money, that you still had food to eat. That was the kind of leader that Sargon was. So, he was known for using bureaucracy and administration. Now, what does that mean, bureaucracy, administration? Basically, if I was a leader and I didn't care, I might say, hey, you, can you just go do, go fix something over there. Can you help me with this? Can you go help me grow these things? These farmers are annoying me. Or you might not try to be very organized. You would do what you think is right when you thought it was right. You wouldn't have advisors. You wouldn't get support. When you have a government, though, you have ministers. You have people who become experts in a section of ruling. So yes, I'm the prime minister, or I'm the president, or I'm the emperor, but I don't know how to do everything. So what do? I create departments. And that's what bureaucracy is all about. It's about creating structures and systems so that when I rule, I'm not ruling over every single person. I'm asking my ministers or department heads to help me rule. He was the first leader to create that system. And from there, emperors followed in his footsteps to be effective rulers. In fact, the Roman Empire was inspired by Sargon the Great's ruling of the Akkadian Empire. And the Roman Empire is known for having a good, effective leadership structure. What makes an empire rise? Having new or better technology. So the Hittites were a small little empire that was rich because of its production of iron. So it used a process called iron smelting. This is a process of extracting iron from something like sand. So what they did before, when you wanted to get iron, because iron existed before, the ancient Egyptians found meteorites. You know what a meteorite is? What's a meteorite? Can you share with the class? Yeah, sure. I know. So something in space that drops to Earth. So if you hear of a shooting star or a star that flies across the sky, a meteorite is a little rock that ends up going from space through Earth down to the ground. The ancient Egyptians would find these rocks, extract iron from these rocks, and create swords and weapons and special objects for use in ceremonies. Guys, the ancient Egyptian blades from space rocks. But it's really hard to get space rocks. Meteorites don't fall every single day exactly where you need it. You can't just simply say, all right, do you see one? I don't see one. And then just wait. So you had to be able to find a new source of iron. So the Hittites were able to create a technology that extracted iron from sand. And they closely kept that secret. They did not let anyone find out what process they were using, so that way they could grow rich and keep all the money from creating iron for themselves. A cultural desire to expand is another reason why an empire might grow. So I mentioned to you that Neo-Babylonia had that gorgeous Ishtar gate. They loved focusing on beautiful architecture and art, and they really tried to improve people's lives. One of the things that they're most known for are the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. They don't exist today, but people, travelers, would write about how beautiful this multi-level garden was, with all of its gorgeous waterfalls and trees and flowers. People would come to Babylon just to see this marvel. It was as important as coming to Angkor Wat. In fact, it is considered to be one of the ancient wonders of the world, including also the pyramids. How did people build the pyramids? People ask themselves the same question: how did Babylon create such a beautiful garden? So this investment in the beauty and the innovation, in the invention of a empire helped it to stay alive. If you were an excellent trader, if you knew how to establish good relationships with others, then of course you're going to be strong, because your strength is in the relationships that you build. The Phoenicians were really amazing traders. They existed, actually they didn't really have an empire, but they had they were very wealthy because they traded all along the Mediterranean. So their power was being able to sell a very important cloth. Colors in materials are hard to get. Now we can create any kind of dye we want because we have this technology to create all kinds of colors. But back then, you had to use plants, you had to find the color from a specific plant to be able to create certain colors. So yellow was pretty easy to make. You would be able to get it from saffron, for example. But the color purple, kind of hard to find in nature, actually. To extract enough of it, to get enough color purple to be able to make this color. So, this color became a marker of your wealth, because if you could afford it, you wore a lot of it. In India still today, this color purple is a marker of royalty in some cases. So purple became purple, blue purple, became associated with wealth. The Phoenicians also developed the first alphabet. And you're like, yeah, alphabet, that makes sense, A, B, C, D. It was before this, you guys, for many of you who might actually know Chinese, one character, one word, right? So if you want to create a sentence, it's character word, maybe a verb, and then maybe a character word. But what the Phoenicians did was, rather than creating a character word-based system of writing, they now created letters, individual letters, that could then be rearranged to create any word, an infinite number of words. So before, you might have to memorize 10,000 characters in order for you to write. Now, all you have to memorize are 26 or 50 characters or letters in order for you to write. The Phoenicians were the first people to create that alphabet system, which is what Khmer uses, which is what the English language or Romance languages use. No infighting. So obviously, if you want your empire to be strong, you have to be able to get along. So these empires were all about building good relationships. Even if you didn't always know the language that you were of the people you conquered, even if you didn't always know their culture, by creating good relationships, then you were able to create better systems. So then, after we talked about why empires get bigger, why would empires fall? There are a number of reasons why an empire might fall. And there's always more than one reason. We will talk a lot about different reasons why empires were affected by multiple things happening at once. So I'll talk about them one by one, though, right now. We have the loss of a leader. So remember when I mentioned to you that Babylon broke away from Acadia. One of the reasons why Babylon said people was because the Sargon the Great died, and nobody could decide who could possibly replace such an amazing emperor. So Babylon was like, hey, and created their own empire. So when you lose a leader, it can dramatically shift everything about how a place is ruled. Outdated technology. Remember that I mentioned to you that the Hittites kept their technology a secret because they didn't want for anyone to get access to their iron making. But of course, you can only keep something a secret for so long. So spies found their way into the Hittite Empire and stole the information about how their iron was made, and everybody started copying it. So there you go, maybe like a lesson for anyone who wants to open a business. Sometimes it might be helpful to keep your secret, but other times someone is going to hack your computer, get your secret, and then make a ton of money off of it. So just be careful. Business advice for all of you. Civil wars. I mentioned to you that empires being able to get along with the people in their country, in their empire, helped them to last longer. Well, many times, if a leader died, then there was a lot of fighting over who would take over. So civil wars happened a lot, where brother would go against brother. There would be like people who would say, I should be next, and people like, no, you're a girl, you can't be next. and etc. So a lot of civil war fighting then destroyed empires. And, when you also are fighting wars, you are not taking care of your people. All of your resources then go to fighting the war and not caring for the people that you are ruling over. Natural disasters. So you guys understand that when a volcano erupts, when you have a massive eruption, you have lava that comes out, but you also have pollution that goes into the air. That pollution can last for over 6 months to a year. It can get in your lungs and make it challenging to breathe. It can make your crops die. So when you have a volcanic eruption, it can actually destroy all of your economy. So there was one major eruption on an island back in 1600 BCE that exploded and then basically wiped out some of the empire's economy for a limited time. The last thing that we have is sea people, so invaders. There was this really crazy group of people who would just randomly attack city after city. Nobody ever discovered why. They just felt like it. So they would go from city to city and destroy and set fire to multiple places along the Mediterranean. You can't really control for that. So the Hittites, the ones with the iron, not only lost their technology, but then also lost their cities and were destroyed by sea people. So you have in your slides on Google, I'm going to have to stop early, but you have a quick summary. We talked about the hunter-gatherer societies then becoming more complex, pastoral societies, and then we had agricultural societies that were the foundation for civilization. These civilizations, as they grew bigger, some of them ended up being turned into empires. And empires were great for a number of great reasons, and were successful when they had good leadership, when they had good economy, and when their people were happy. But also, empires were able to fall because of bad leadership, so a lot of civil wars, or even natural disasters. All right, so I will see you guys next week. Stay in your seats because we have somebody coming to talk to you.
Life.